ladies, and welcome to the social media home of Real Life Women's Ministry. I'm Dr. Venessa Ellen, and I'm so excited that you stopped by. Now listen, today we're going to have a great conversation. I have a good friend with me, and we're just going to talk about being a Christian wife. And what does that really mean? What does that look like? How do you practice that? But before we get into all of that, we've made our coffee. So Val, let's taste it. Let's see. That's good. As your husband would say, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, before we get deep into our questions, tell the ladies a little bit about yourself. Church go to, how long you've been there, and where you serve in ministry.
Okay. So I have been at the church since 2015. I serve in praise and worship ministry, and I'm on the women's council as well.
Yes. And that's a big thing. Now, for those of you who don't know, at our church, what I have is a women's council that helps me to run and manage the women's ministry. I really firmly believe that one person can't do it all and should not even try in ministry to do it all. God gives us all different gifts and things like that. So how long did you say you've been at the church?
I've been at the church since 2015.
What do you think is the thing that you've learned that is like most impactful to you since you've been at this church?
I want to say everything, but I know that's not enough, not specific enough.
Right.
So, gosh, I would say the first thing I learned when I came to the church is that was just mind blowing and just kind of changed my whole perspective was just how selfish I am. I don't think there's so much out there in the world about, you gotta serve yourself, make yourself happy, like happy wife, happy life, all these things that I believed, all these lies that I believed, I didn't realize were lies. Just that was huge. That just changed my whole perspective, and then it took me to the Lord, and it reminded me why I'm here. I'm not here for myself. I'm here for Him. And then what does that look like? That looks like He's at the center of everything. And we say that so lightly, but when you really understand it, it's just like it changes so many things. It changes the way I am as a wife. It changes the way I am as a friend, as I am in so many ways. I just had to die to myself. And I don't think I really understood that before I came there. I didn't understand how the scriptures really are alive and active. Just so many things. So
well, that's a great truth that we all need to just go deeper into. Well, that was my question. I hear you have a bunch of questions for me that I don't know what they are. So let's jump right on in.
Yes. Okay. So I have a lot, and I'm gonna try not to. We're gonna see where it goes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna start with the first, and we'll just kind of go with the flow.
Okay.
So the first question, as I was, trying to figure out questions to ask, I realized I really needed to go to the very beginning of just what womanhood is just completely just what it is. I don't think a lot of people fully understand that. There's a lot of confusion out there. The world tells us what a woman is. Even growing up, we were told what a woman is. I was told about Proverbs 31 woman. I always wanted to be a Proverbs 31 woman growing up. I was like, I'm going to be a Proverbs 31, but I didn't really know what that meant, really, truly. So I guess my question is, can you explain what womanhood is biblically?
Okay. So I would go back to Genesis and creation. And God created male, He created female, He created them in His image. And He gave Adam a function, a role to play. And He gave Eve a function, a role to play. I think where we get crossed up is that we think one function, one role is greater or lesser than the other. So when we look at Adam, we see God has called him to lead, called him to name the animals and all that. And that's how we get that there's a hierarchy there. There's a leadership role there. Eve, in Genesis, we see she's called to be the helper suitable. And that's us. We're the helper suitable. The word basically is 𝗓𝗏 is what it is. 𝗓𝗏. We were created like Him. The problem in our culture and everywhere else is that many of us would take that wording, that text, that scripture, and say we're just like Him. But we're not. We're not like Him physically. not greater or lesser.
Yes.
We're different. We're not less than, we're different. God has a role for each of us. He just created us differently. We are just like man in essence, in image, in being, in heirs to the throne of the grace of God. So biblical womanhood is walking in my understanding of how God has created me differently, but not lesser than man. So when I walk in my biblical womanhood, which could be another question of what flows out of my biblical womanhood, which is my understanding of who God created me to be as a woman, then I walk in my biblical femininity. But that's a whole nother situation.
So when you said, okay, so why do you think it's so important as a Christian wife to understand biblical womanhood in the first place?
It is, because I think if you go back to the Old Testament and start how God created and the order that he created, and we get into the New Testament and you start talking about Paul and all the things that he has called us to do and not to do.
Yes.
And you get to, when you start looking at 1 Peter and you look at all these different places where wives submit to your husbands and so on and so forth. Well, why do I submit to him? Because God has set him up to be the leader, the head of my home. I'm called to 𝗪𝗡𝗪, which means line up under him. And when we say I do, that means I'm willingly agreeing to line up under him. That's a military term that just says I am going to line up under this leadership. So I think it's important, one, because I feel like the world would have us to believe, well, if I have to submit to him, then I'm less than him. But if God created everything, everything he created was good, then why do I allow the world to tell me differently? I don't have to be like man. I'm equal in essence to God. God doesn't see me as less than. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You know what I mean? It's just there are roles and responsibilities that he's given me, and there are roles and responsibilities that he's given the man. So the answer to your question would be, it's important, because if not, we could feel or start to feel like, well, then I don't have a brain, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, or what about me? Well, what about me? What about me? What about me is I am useful to the kingdom. He gave me a purpose, and I'm better off when I'm fulfilling his purpose.
So as I'm actually really encouraged by that, and that I will say my perspective shifting on that has just been such a blessing in our marriage and in my life. Because I do believe that in the culture there's so much push of like, I can be like a man and I'm supposed to like, versus just, okay, so God has made me different as a woman. Okay, Lord, what is my walk to look like? And I just don't, I unfortunately don't know if that's discussed a lot in the church. And it's unfortunately, I think there's a lot of women out there who are kind of confused as far as like, how do I walk this out? What does that look like? Because I'm comparing myself to a man. And it's all kinds of confusion.
And I think that each role, because we live in a fallen world, has its own problems. I don't think that we could, as women, say, oh, woe is me, I got it so bad, because men have it bad too in a fallen world.
For sure.
I wouldn't want to be the leader.
No.
I don't want to be the head. I don't want to have to stand before God and answer for what my wife did. You know, me. I feel bad that my husband's going to have to, you know, like, and I try to make it easy on him, but I'm just saying, you know, I like what God has called me to. I like what God has called him to, but I didn't always understand it. And I do know that it's not easy. So I hope that no one's taken away from this, that I'm saying that it's easy to walk in your role. But I also don't think it's easy for men to walk in their role.
Not at all.
Now, I think you hit on something. I think it is hard for us to walk this out because there are some men, because I can hear some women probably saying, but men take advantage of this perspective. Yes, there are some men who will take advantage of this perspective. But what are we saying? There's somebody that's going to sin against you? Yes. And guess what? We're going to sin against them. There are some women who don't want to submit. There are some women where the husband would rather be on the rooftop in the corner instead of being in the house with a nagging wife. You live in a fallen world. Does that mean that I'm not going to appreciate what God has designed and do what he has called me to do? No.
I think at the end of the day, is God really who he says he is? Do we trust that?
And did he know what he was doing?
Does he know what he's doing? And I think you said before is when we're not willing to submit to our husband, it's really an issue of our not willing to submit to the Lord.
Yeah. When I start to feel that way, I always remind myself, it's not like my husband went and stood in line with God and like, please, can I be the leader? Please, please somebody let me be the leader. No, I feel like some men would be like, please, can I not? Can I not today, please? I got my own problems.
Right. So in that same, I guess, realm or essence, as far as being a helpmate, how can we help lighten the load for our husbands?
Yeah, I think, so let's go back to Adam and Eve. We are called to be a helper suitable to our particular husband. Mm-hmm. So your husband may have a design and calling, not a design, but a calling mm-hmm. that's different than my husband, right? Mm-hmm. Our husbands may have something that's different than the next husband. I always say you need to be the helper suitable to your particular husband. What has God gifted him to do? What has God set him apart to do? What needs does he have that you can meet based on what God has called him to do? If he is a ditch digger in Houston, in Texas, mm-hmm. in the summer at 190 degrees, well, you might want to bone up on nutrition and hydration and whatever. What can you do to help him be better at what God has set him apart to do? Mm-hmm. How can I get this house in control, corral these kids to where if he's got a rough day at work today that, he can have a moment of peace when he gets home, or he can have a good meal. What can I do to help him?
Yeah. Would one way, I guess, of knowing that is to ask?
Yeah. Ask. So, okay, ladies, go back and watch this. I did a Coffee with My Pastor's Wife with Sean, mm-hmm. and we talked about how to really kind of be a good helper to your husband. I forget, that wasn't her title, but something like that. And I said, ask and anticipate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because some things they don't even know they need.
So how do you do that? How do you anticipate without possibly offending?
Okay, so
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, but it's getting to know your husband, okay. Right? And that takes time. Mm-hmm. That takes time. I remember in the beginning of our marriage, the Lord just really was showing me through prayer. Okay, one of the things was when he would come home, because he's been in ministry all our marriage, mm-hmm. so he's talking to people all day long, ministering to people all day long, listening to their problems all day long. The Lord just impressed upon my heart to quiet the house, because he just needed a moment to kind of, what's the word, not detox, but just kind of center himself. Mm-hmm. So I would make sure the kids were quiet, the house was clean, and dinner was prepared. And I didn't kind of hit him as soon as he came in the door with all of the things that happened in my life. And usually, he'd sit down or shower, whatever, an hour later. Then he's ready to engage mm-hmm. in whatever I need to talk about. So when I say anticipate, I mean more of study your husband. Mm. Know his likes, his dislikes, his wants, his desires. And then you can get a beat. You may not be right every time. And then you can ask him after the fact, hey, did this help you?
That's good. Yeah.
And then he can say, yeah, that really did. Or, no, not so much. And now these days, what I've been doing with my husband is in the morning before I get started with the things on my to-do list, I'll ask, hey, what can I do for you today? Mm-hmm. What do you need from me before I give me to the rest of the world?
Right. Yeah. That's good. And you also mentioned prayer, and I had a question about praying for our husbands. Mm-hmm. So how important would you say it is for us to be praying for our husbands? And what are some things that I should be praying for?
Man, I think it is 300% important mm-hmm. to pray for them, because there are brothers in Christ as well. Mm-hmm. So, part of the prayer life too, I think, is also being in tune and listening to him. I listen to, okay, he said, he had a rough conversation, or he had a rough counseling session, or he had this, or he's got, a little ache in this arm or whatever. I just mm-hmm. listen, and then I take those things to the Lord. But I also ask him, hey, how can I pray for you today? Mm-hmm. So my husband and I, every morning, we pray together, and every night we try, but we don't always make it every night because he travels a lot. and our time zones may be different. But we try every morning to get up and pray before we get started in our day. And most times at night. And I'll always say, hey, how can I pray for you today?
Yeah.
What do you have on your plate today that I can pray about?
Yeah. That made me think of another question I have. So, as I believe I already said, and as you already know, I have 3 children, 4 and under. So it can be very busy and there can be a whole lot going on. So how do you stay connected during these busy times? Or how would you suggest for a Christian wife to stay connected to her husband during these times?
Yeah, I think you remember, or maybe you'll remember, we talked about this long before you all ever had children, and I encourage all ladies to make sure that it is a God-centered house and not a children-centered house. So one of the ways to stay connected is not allowing the children to run the house. What do I mean by that? Hold on, ladies, hold on. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, put them on a schedule, a discipline, which you do. You have your kids on some type of discipline so that, it may not happen every night, but he can count on having his wife back at 9:05 or whatever, because remember, it was y'all before it was y'all, for sure. And I think sometimes they may feel like they've lost their buddy. They've lost their pal. For sure. You know what I mean? To these little people. We love the little people, but, I think it's very, very good and healthy for the children to know that you all love each other enough that, okay, you need to give us time too. Yeah. So I think to stay connected, one is to have a God-centered home and not a child-centered home. Have a schedule. With little kids, it's not always going to work, but at least aim for a schedule. And get other people involved, like church members, come over, take these little people and we're going to go be us and we'll be back. Yeah. Or early morning times with him, Stay connected. Yeah. Nap times. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What are some things that you all do for fun as a married couple?
Well, we've been locked in the house for 2 years or so. Good thing we love each other.
What do you do? What did you do before and what do you do now?
Right. Our newest thing is I'm reading all these different books. And so we walk and we talk a lot about everything. And it's become really important to us that we get that time in together because it's just us. It's kind of hard to still be on your phone or texting or answering email when you're out about walking. That's good. So we do that. We also, we talk a lot. My husband talks a lot. He's a pastor. So we stay connected. We talk. Even if he's driving to wherever he's driving to, he'll call me and it's like, I just saw you. Yeah. We're just here. He's like, I just wonder what you're doing. Same thing I was doing when you left 5 minutes ago. Right.
Yeah, I can get that. I'm on that line.
Yeah. The other thing that we are doing is, this is more intentional. Like we're starting our travel season, our speaking season. We're doing a lot of conferences and stuff like that. We've started adding a day or two to the travel schedule. Example would be like somebody wants us to come and speak at a conference Friday and Saturday. We've started adding, we'll fly in on Wednesday. And then we have Wednesday and Thursday, just us. Oh, that's cool. In whatever city. Then we'll give them Friday and Saturday. And we're back home to our church people on Sunday. But we've started building in little moments here and there and everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, that's taking me to, I had questions on ministry.
Okay.
So how do I support my husband's ministry while serving in mine?
That's a good question. So likely there can be togetherness in ministry, but there needs to be separateness as well. You can support by asking, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And also talking through what your ministries are. It works better when both people embrace each other's ministry. One thing a lady told me, maybe we had been married 3 years or more, and my husband was very active. He was assistant pastor at the church. He was an elder. He was so active. And I was at home twiddling my thumbs. dealing with the kids and whatever. And I was literally losing my mind. And so I was the nagging wife when he came home. And it really was bad. And this older lady said to me, she said, baby, you need to get your life. You need to get a life. And I was like, oh, clutch my pearls. What do you mean? What are you gifted to do?
Right.
Can you go do something, please, and leave this man alone? I think it works better when he understands my responsibilities and the gifts that God has given me, and he appreciates that. I understand what God has called him to and his gifts, and we work together. Meaning, we do our best to support each other's ministry. So your question is, how do you support him? Find out what does he need, and take care of it before you go do your ministry.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, find out, is there anything? Can there be anything? One of the important things that we do as a church is we try, not perfectly, but we try not to put the ministries on the same day. Mm-hmm. Like, that's very important to me because I know about the kids. If we have a women's ministry event and a men's ministry event on Friday night, okay, who's watching the kids? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. That can cause, not only that, I realize that can cause conflict in the home. Mm. Because what if he wants to go and you want to go, but okay, who's watching the kids?
Yeah. Well, so how does that work? So, because my question would be, so like, he is it right to say that I should be putting his ministry, I don't know if it's first, but, or you know what I'm saying? Like, I
think they should complement each other, because there could be a season where he's dormant. He's not doing a whole lot and you're busy, or you're dormant and he, you know, it's the life of the church. Mm-hmm. What I think also is the church has to be intentional in checking in on the families. The other thing I would say is when I say we, I mean the leaders don't always know we're causing conflict in your house. Mm. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I think somebody has to say, how about...
Right.
Well,
yeah.
You know this thing that y'all keep doing? Yo. It then spilled over to my house now. Can we do something a little different?
Right.
Because if we don't know, then we can't fix it.
Right.
You know? But I am very intentional about trying to say, hey, did y'all check the calendar to make sure that this is not happening and that's not happening? Now, is that always going to happen? Mm-mm.
Right.
You're going to have holidays where all the ministries are engaged and everybody just got to look. Eat your Wheaties, suck it up, buttercup, and we're going to go do this thing together.
Yeah.
But I think if everybody's understanding that we're all serving the Lord, and husband and wife understand the passion of each other's giftedness and work together, it'll be all right. And when it's not working, hey, raise up the white flag and say, or is it the red flag? Which flag? Raise a flag. Raise a flag and say, trouble.